Thank you all so much for tuning in to another episode of Mikasa Sukasa, and I am your host, Niko House. And for those who've already donated to our One Follow $1 campaign, I want to thank you. To those who do not, go ahead and click on that Patreon link in the description below and let the mainstream media know that if they will not invest in the truth, then we will invest in those who do. And you can do so by just donating $1. It's really that simple. It really helps the show, helps us grow, and helps us give you better quality and better content. Some interesting news. The Washington Post is a weird organization. You already know that it's pretty much owned by the CIA. It's just not an exaggeration. It's just not a joke. They reported recently about the quote-unquote GOP memo. By the way, the fact that they are calling it the GOP memo should be reason enough to distrust them. Because before it was going to release, it was called just the memo, the FISA memo. Then as it got closer to release, it was called the Nunez memo. And now that it's been released, they preempted it, really, and called it the GOP memo, which is weird. I don't know why they're calling it the GOP memo, because from what I saw, for the most part, it was objective, material facts. And it didn't even give out all the facts. It gave out a lot of the facts, but it didn't even give out all the facts. I'm actually curious what more we didn't know. But I will tell you something that we did know that many people had overlooked. I want to give a shout out to Lee Stranahan, because this is actually something that he pointed out. And then I was like, oh, damn, this is a big deal. So, Washington Post just recently made a post talking about how Carter Page has been under constant FBI surveillance. But one of the things they said specifically was that Page had been on the radar of the FBI at least as far back as 2013, when a bureau wiretap caught suspected Russian spies discussing their attempts to recruit him. Even after being interviewed by the investigators in that case, Page continued to have extensive contacts with Russians, including trips to Moscow in July and then December of 2016. It's not clear what the FBI learned about Page's late 2016 travel abroad, which occurred just weeks after Trump's election. But 5 senior Justice Department FBI officials signed off on 3 requests for extension of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Warrant for Page. All the requests were approved by a federal judge, according to the Republican memo. Weird that it's Republican memo. Whenever they're talking about it being approved, it's the Republican memo. When they want to convince you that it's totally, total lies and propaganda, it's the GOP memo. People, do you know as far back as November 2017, the Washington Post also wrote another article? In fact, it was the Washington Post who told us that Carter Page was an informant for the FBI. He was an informant for the FBI whose job was to spy on Russians. As a matter of fact, do you know how that room got wiretapped? The room got wiretapped because Carter Page was wearing the wire, people. He was initially under surveillance because he volunteered to be under surveillance. Yeah. So even when Andrew McCabe says, which is the wrong answer, by the way, but Andrew McCabe said that the surveillance was granted and would have never been granted if it wasn't for the Trump dossier. I beg to differ. I feel like that Trump dossier was full of shit. And what happened was you needed someone that you can legitimize surveilling, because you had literally nothing on anyone else except for the one person that you put in front of Russians. But look at how deceptive the mainstream media is, because we only know this fact because the Washington Post initially reported it. That means that they tried to pretend, the FBI, the intelligence community, the Justice Department, tried to pretend they had no idea what Carter Page was doing, and they were the ones who put him up to it. This, ladies and gentlemen, is what you call a scapegoat. This is exactly why we don't trust the intelligence community. This is exactly why we have to talk about the deep state. This is exactly why those text messages talking about the FBI text messages from Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, them talking about their underground, secret society, is a big deal, because clearly there is one. They just threw this man under the bus. Of course he knew he was under surveillance. People thought it was a big deal. They're like, were they planning on doing this the whole time? The FBI put him under surveillance. He was wiretapped. Not only was this on the on Washington Post, but it was actually reported by the Department of Justice on their website. But the Washington Post decided to give a Page had been on the radar of the FBI at least as far back as 2013, when a bureau wiretap caught a random bureau wiretap. Who did they tap? They didn't tap the Russians. Maybe the only other American in the room. Maybe that's who they tapped. So that means they have been surveilling him. But he knew. And his job was to interact with Russians. So they're pretending. So once again, the FISA memo, because we got to remember how much the Democrats fought and fought and fought and fought and fought even more, telling us that whatever's in this memo is lies. That's what Nancy Pelosi said. Dianne Feinstein is trying to distract us with Russian bots fighting for releasing the memo. Those damn Russian bots. God forbid it's the American people curious about what the fuck is going on in their country. Couldn't be that. It couldn't be that. And all this time, this is what they were probably worried about. That we will remember that this isn't a guy from the Trump administration. He went on the Trump campaign, but he's from the Trump administration. This entire time, since 2013, this guy was on the Obama administration. An administration of FBI agents who we now know are extremely corrupt. I'm interested to know how you all feel about this. Leave your thoughts and comments below. And always remember, ladies and gentlemen, find your balance.